good people don't smoke marijuana.
I've known Larry for a long time.
Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
The medical marijuana. The medical marijuana. Radio show. The medical marijuana for you and me. Ah, yeah, the medical marijuana. Whoa, 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 ah, yeah, the medical. It's the medical marijuana show. You will know.
Welcome to another edition of Medical Marijuana Radio. This one is for Saturday, the 1st of September, 2018. I'm your host, Larry Love. We're here every week to bring you the latest information on the medical uses of cannabis and also the fight for legalization and decriminalization of cannabis. And this information comes from all over the globe. I spend hours and hours searching for interesting stories and studies and so forth, and I bring them to you every week. This week we have Alexander Nachman out of Florida, former Wall Street man, who is going to tell us all about investing in public stocks in the stock exchange in cannabis. It seems to be an opportunity there now. People are making money, and we'll be talking to him about how you can invest. And of course, you have to be careful at this time as well. But first, as always, I've got some news for you. And first up, I just want to tell you about in New Jersey, a New Jersey college student can now minor in medical marijuana. Now, I've been doing that for 50 years. But August 31st, 2018, this is from AJC.com by Bob D'Angelo, Cox Media. Students at a New Jersey have a high... Sorry about that. Students in New Jersey have a high expectation for courses of study in medical marijuana, says NJ.com. Stockton University begins its fall semester next week and is offering cannabis studies as a minor, WNYC reported. This is a growing industry, and we want to prepare our students from a variety of academic viewpoints. Biology professor Katerina Sedia, the program coordinator for cannabis studies, said in a statement. Quote, "We will not be telling students what is the right thing to do," Seda said. "We will be providing context and information that they can use to make their own decisions, offering a program that is not an endorsement." University spokeswoman Diane D'Amico told NJ.com that the 25 students in the program will take a cannabis law course this fall, followed by a class on medical marijuana in New Jersey in the spring. Sedia, the coordinator of the program, called medical marijuana an industry that is developing, and certainly there is a lot of possibilities and new jobs. Oftentimes, colleges get criticized for not offering students real-life skills, and that certainly is going to be a life skill regardless of whether New Jersey stops at medical or goes to recreational side of it, Seda said, an associate professor of biology, she told WNYC just the other day. So that's New Jersey, of course, legitimizing our industry for sure. All right, moving over to a very legitimate area of the country, we have Nevada. And Nevada reports more than 500 million marijuana sales in its first year. And this is by Fox 13 in Salt Lake City. New figures released by Nevada's Department of Taxation show the state made more than $500 million in its first year of recreational marijuana sales. It's 140% of what the state expected, a veritable cash crop. The state reported $529.9 million in sales for all marijuana sales. That includes recreational and medicinal and cannabis-related products. Tax-wise, the Nevada Department of Taxation reported taking in nearly $70 million from 2017 to 2018 fiscal year. Adult use marijuana sales totaled $424.9 million for the year, generating $42.5 million in tax collections through the 10% retail marijuana tax The agency said in a statement that a 15% wholesale tax collected $27.3 million for the fiscal year. The wholesale tax goes to education. Retail taxes go to the state's rainy day fund. Moving on, but staying right in Nevada, pot lounges could become a reality in Las Vegas. Now, we know that legalization in Colorado and Washington and Oregon and everywhere that has legalized for adult use, there's no place for people to consume. It has to be in private areas. So the laws are just starting to be put forth by the state so that people can safely medicate. Marijuana lounges could be the next big thing in Las Vegas cannabis industry. And so I do have this to play for you in regard to that. Hang on, where is it? Well, I don't have that. But anyway, it's huge in Vegas. But also in Vegas, a new company is putting out a canna beer, okay? No alcohol in it, but it's infused with cannabis. So this is out of Las Vegas. Available to you now.
With Las Vegas's budding marijuana industry, a new product, the first of its kind, hit the shelves tonight.
News 3's Max Darrow is live at the Las Vegas Relief Dispensary with a look at the new marijuana-infused beer. Who would have thought of that, Max?
Who would have thought? So get this, it's a can of beer that is a canna beer. And what it is, it's this non-alcoholic cannabis-infused beer. And the man behind this says this will be a big step forward for the rest of the marijuana industry.
The marijuana market, planted in Las Vegas, is growing. In the first year of recreational sales, it generated nearly $70 million in tax revenue for the state.
Obviously, the industry is doing a lot better than everyone anticipated.
Kevin Love, with the company Cannabis, thinks his marijuana-infused, alcohol-free beer will help the budding industry expand even more.
For cannabis, in general, the industry, this product is really going to start driving normalcy in consumption habits.
The beer is called Two Roots. On sale for the very first time on Friday, 6-packs were flying off of the shelves at the dispensary Las Vegas Relief.
I like it so much better. You don't get that nasty feeling after you start, stop drinking and just like drowsy. You just feel good, just uplifted.
I love beer and I love cannabis, so they put the both together, so why not?
Love says Two Roots is an alternative to alcohol and also to some of the stronger legal marijuana products that you'll find at local dispensaries.
You will get the effects of cannabis, but it's not going to be an overwhelming experience of cannabis consumption.
So right now, Two Roots is only available here at Las Vegas Relief, but I am told that within the next several weeks or so, you should be able to find this cannabis-infused beer at some of the other dispensaries around Las Vegas. Reporting live tonight, Max Darrow, News 3.
Of course, there's other people that are putting out products. I know that the great singer-songwriter Melissa Etheridge is also putting out a cannabis-infused wine in California, so that's quite exciting as well. But while this is all happening, it seems that the current administration, let's call it the Orange administration, there's all kinds of stuff coming out about how he is for making cannabis legal in all states. I've seen this report posted on Facebook and news reports for months and months now. However, the latest reports are there's a secret commission working to portray marijuana in a negative light at the White House. And here is this.
Coverage of Colorado at 6 begins with reaction to a federal campaign that takes aim at legal marijuana. It's asking officials in more than a dozen federal agencies to paint pot in a bad light, regardless of what any research might show. That secret committee was revealed through several White House memos and emails.
Those documents were obtained by BuzzFeed News. Rick Sounder has been looking into this story for you. He joins us now live with what this might mean for Colorado. Rick.
Karen, you may remember that President Trump gave assurances to Colorado leaders that the federal government would pretty much stand clear of those states which voted to legalize pot. This action seems to paint a different picture.
The objective appears to be to portray marijuana only in a negative light, according to the memos and emails obtained by BuzzFeed. They state what's called the Marijuana Policy Coordination Committee calls for messaging the negative impacts of marijuana use, production, and trafficking on national health, safety, and security. Representative Jared Paulus calls that appalling.
It's unscientific, and frankly, it's a slap in the face to states like Colorado who've chosen their own direction to regulate marijuana instead of engage in continued prohibition.
Following Colorado and Washington, 9 states and D.C. have now okayed recreational marijuana. 30 have medical pot. A summary of a July 27th meeting between the White House and 9 departments said the agency should provide the most significant data demonstrating negative trends, with a statement describing the implications of such trends. Diane Carlson is a founder of Smart Colorado, which has been trying to protect youth from marijuana harm. Would you approve of the government distributing negative information only about marijuana?
Oh my goodness, if it's fact-based, we absolutely need that information.
While regulated under Colorado law, marijuana remains illegal under the federal laws of the United States. We contacted federal authorities who are based here in Denver, and they said they have not heard of the committee or that campaign. Live in Denver, Rick Salinger, covering Colorado First.
Okay, so everything is just in conflict right now. You can't believe anything that's coming out of the White House, whether they're for or against something, whatever it is. And of course, we have a really huge CBD market. CBD has become very, very popular. And there's controversy about that. Here in New Mexico, all of a sudden, licensed dispensaries that are allowed to sell cannabis, full plant extracts and THC cannabis, are not allowed to sell CBD in their cannabis store anymore, their dispensary. The local Department of Health medical cannabis program says that CBD needs to be grown within the state. If they were growing it in the state, they would be allowed to sell it. So they can't outsource it anymore from Colorado or anywhere else. And there's all these little CBD boutiques that are around for patients to go to, which is a good thing. But they need to be careful also. Here is a report out of Ohio. I think we talked about it before, but this is a new report, that Ohio rules that CBD oil is illegal under medical marijuana laws. And this is from NPR. Don't sue me, NPR.
Products derived from marijuana that don't contain THC, the chemical that produces a high, are being sold in stores throughout the state. Cannabinoid or CBD oil can be found in boutique shops and health food stores. But the state's pharmacy board says sales of those products are illegal. The board's clarification on CBD oil, which is derived from marijuana or hemp, says it is illegal under Ohio's new medical marijuana law, which takes effect September 8th. The board says CBD oil must go through the same testing procedures and comply with the same rules as actual marijuana. And the board adds the only legal way to sell it is through a medical marijuana control program dispensary. The message is clear that until dispensaries are operational, and none are right now, no one is allowed to possess or sell CBD oil and other marijuana-related products. Still, some stores stocking CBD oil are continuing to sell it, despite the Pharmacy Board's ruling. Joe Ingles at the Ohio Public Radio State House News Bureau.
So this all points to descheduling cannabis and CBD and defining what cannabis is and what marijuana is. I mean, look, it's all the same. It's cannabis is cannabis, whether it's CBD or it's got THC in it. They made a arbitrary ruling or law some years ago to define what is hemp and what's the difference between hemp and cannabis. So I guess what they did was they drew a line and have it as less than 3% or less THC in a cannabis plant is called industrial hemp or hemp, and therefore CBD is supposed to be legal under that. But something has to change. Something has to change soon. GW Pharmaceuticals has the FDA approval on their product, which is all CBD, and they're having another product coming out called Sativex that's going to have THC in it. So the descheduling has to happen soon, and I do think it might happen even before the election in November, but we'll find out about that. Before we take a break and come back with Alexander Nachman from Florida, and we're going to talk about how to invest, and is it good to invest in the cannabis industry right now with stocks and so forth. In Florida, they have just a terrible time with their medical cannabis program there. There's not enough dispensaries, there's not enough doctors, but here's a Florida mobile clinic that drives around into counties and places where there's not doctors that will sign you up, that are on the approved list. And here's this report to try to help people get signed up.
It could be a thing of the past. A new marijuana. Right now, Bay County has just one medical marijuana doctor managing all of the medical marijuana patients in our area. However, waiting for an appointment could be a thing of the past. A new marijuana doctor will soon be headed our way for good and on wheels. News 13's Alex Thorson tells us how a South Florida company is sending the state's first mobile medical marijuana clinic to Bay County.
I have had 4 surgeries on the bottom of my foot.
Trina Washington knows pain.
I have a condition that continues to come back.
At the end of her search to relieve some of it,
my doctor suggested that there was a way that I might control the pain and get back to living again.
She landed at medical marijuana.
Then I took it and my whole life has changed.
Washington got a recommendation and now has a medical marijuana card. Bay County only has one doctor's office certified to give the recommendations. That's until a company called Marijuana Doctor opens shop as well.
I could see us probably going up there in the probably the first quarter of next year.
But until then, they're sending a marijuana doctor on wheels.
We're going to be sending the clinic here in the next, I would say, 3 to 4 weeks on a pretty extensive route.
When the bus arrives, people seeking medical marijuana cards can schedule an appointment or even walk in and try to get a prescription.
I wanted something that I can just take to events, I can take to all these submarkets that are untouched, and just give people more accessibility.
Marijuana doctors can't dispense the medicine, but just recommend it. And although there are no dispensaries in the area, patients can get medicine delivered to their homes. In Bay County, Alex Thorson, News 13.
If you're a physician who wants to get involved or a business owner who wants to see the mobile clinic in your parking lot, details are linked on
their website. And I don't know what TV station that was, but I've got better equipment than they do. I can't believe they interviewed a guy over a cell phone. Unbelievable. Anyway, we're going to be right back. We're going to talk about how you can invest in the cannabis industry. We're going to talk to Alexander Nachman, and he's a former Wall Street analyst and broker, and we're going to talk all about that after these words.
It's all about the 420 MMJ Radio.
Hey there, champ. A friend told me you got a little too high. I'm sorry, pal. This sucks. You may feel like you've gone permanently insane or like you're dead. Here's the good news. You're alive and your sanity is probably intact. You're just really, really high. The first thing you should know is you're safe. No one ever overdosed on cannabis, and you won't be the first. It's going to be okay. You might be feeling way too high for a few hours, but let's not focus on that now. Time has probably lost all meaning for you anyway. So here we are, and everything's gonna be all right. You're real. You know what helps? A fresh breeze. Why not open a window? You can even go for a little walk. No one's looking at you, I promise. Are you hydrated? Weed can give you a serious case of cottonmouth, so drink up. You're not going to die from overhydration. Water is good for you. You're doing great. Got one of these beauties lying around? Lemon pulp, zest, and peels are full of terpenes, which can help regulate THC levels. A glass of fresh lemonade may be just what you need. Hey, let's visit your spice cabinet. Got any fresh peppercorns? There are chemicals in peppercorns that can help bring you down from a high. Grind some of these little guys. Give them a sniff. Don't worry if you sneeze a couple of times. Your brains are still in your head. You're good. Hey, sweetie, you know what helps? A nice sitcom. Nothing too fast-paced or complicated. May I suggest going through the back catalog of Friends? Laughing is fun. Are you freaking out all by yourself? Oh, that won't do. It's time to call a trusted friend. Talking things through can do wonders and remind you that you're a person and not just a cloud of terrifying thoughts.
The medical marijuana. The medical marijuana. Radio. Radio. Show.
Hi, this is Steve D'Angelo, and you are listening to Medical Marijuana Radio.
And we're back. And once again, I'm happy to have Alexander Nachman on. Alexander is a resident of Florida. He's an activist. They also call him Alexander Cannabis. And he's also an advocate for the Florida program and for cannabis in general for use as medicine. But today we're going to talk about the emerging market in cannabis. So welcome back, Alexander.
Thanks, Larry. It's great to be here.
So, I haven't done any shows at all on investing in the cannabis industry. One of the things that I've done myself over the last 10 years is invest in domain names, but there's also public companies that you can buy stock. So let's talk about that today, Alex, and tell us, is this a good time to for some people to get involved? And what kind of, if you're going to invest in an emerging industry like this, do you need a lot of money, Alex?
I don't think you necessarily need a lot of money. Some of the companies are fairly inexpensive, down in the $5 and below range. I happen to like a company by the name of Kush Bottles, which happens to be the leader in packaging and is based out of California. The stock has done quite well over the last year, been in the $1.50 range from about a year and a half to 2 years ago, and made it all the way up to $8 and currently sits just north of $5, and I think is a very, very interesting company and a leader in their space.
So Kush Bottles, if I'm not mistaken, they make the bottles that dispensaries put the bud in and so forth in different packaging, right?
Packaging of all sorts, and of course California just changed their packaging laws, forcing basically a recall of a lot of product off the shelves. But what's bad for the dispensary owner in this instance was good for Kush Bottles. They just opened up a Massachusetts facility to keep up with demand in the Northeast. As we know, Maine and Massachusetts being legal markets. So lots of demand for packaging. And look, I think that good quality packaging is a part of a safe and responsible market. And also, look, this is a precious commodity, the product. You don't want it exposed to the elements. You want quality packaging,
Right.
so that protect what you paid for.
Sure, and of course a lot of it has to do with child safety and so forth, with regulations that states are making to make sure that kids can't get into it. So that's also part of the packaging thing. Now you have a background. You're a former broker on the East Coast, right? So you have a background in the markets.
That is correct. I spent 14 years in the Wall Street arena. I worked primarily as a quantitative model specialist and an individual equity specialist. So this is my forte. Unfortunately, many of the cannabis stocks wouldn't meet those very stringent criteria that I'm used to participating in. However, the market doesn't always run purely on fundamentals. It runs oftentimes on emotion, and it does provide a lot of opportunity in this way. But plus, since cannabis has never been marketed in this way and was never a public commodity, if you will, a publicly traded commodity in a way, by providing cannabis companies, look, if you want to get in, unless you're going to start your own, here's a novel way to participate and also mitigate your risk.
Right. So, all right. So, Kush Bottles is an ancillary company that does not handle any of the cannabis, which, of course, still is a Schedule I federally. So, but there are companies that actually grow cannabis and sell cannabis that are on the market. I guess MedMen is one of the biggest out of California, and I think they're opening up in Massachusetts. What do you know about that company? So, do you feel that it's okay right now before they change the schedule to invest in companies that actually touch the Schedule 1 product?
First of all, obviously, with it federally illegal, it has precluded some investment from some institutions because some of the charters of some institutions are you can't break federal law. And right now, federally, it's illegal. So some of the institutions remain on the sidelines. I know some of my Canadian companies are reluctant to participate in America unless it's something on a federal level. On that note, I do think that things are changing, and is my prediction that basically within the next 3 to 9 months, we'll see a rescheduling of cannabis to a 2. I think, in fact, it might go by the way of the November elections potentially. In order to curry some favor at the mid-year elections, I think that they might announce that they're moving forward on rescheduling and bringing it to a 2, making it quote unquote, federally legal, but still under huge scrutiny. Any activist or advocate that won't appreciate it 2. I think it should be a 4 or a 5. It will give a way to delay a full-blown legalization further, and another way for them to manipulate it for their little evil pharma ends.
Okay, so when you said, is it your feeling that it might go to a 2, or are you like reading stuff or hearing something that we don't know about yet?
Actually, I'm aware and involved currently in a federal grow licensing deal, in which we all know that the University of Mississippi has been growing cannabis for the federal government for the last 40 years plus. The federal government had asked them to expand that relationship and grow a better quality of cannabis and a higher variety of cannabis, and the University of Mississippi said no. At that point, the federal government decided that they would issue 12 new federal grow licenses, all in the name of research, which is exactly what a Schedule 2 allows for. And so they are in the end stages of making the decisions. They had 60 applications along those lines. They've narrowed it down to 15 that qualify financially, and 25 are still in the pool. But I do feel like we are very close to a breakthrough on that level that we get a federal rescheduling.
Okay, yeah, it obviously it has to be done because we can't do business without leaving the schedule, and then we get banking and all that stuff. So obviously it has to be. For us to move forward, we need to change the schedule. So, okay, you mentioned a Canadian company. So what I'm seeing, and I've only been really looking in on this for a little while, is that there are big Canadian companies, and there's a big Canadian market, okay, as well, where you can buy Canadian stocks. Some of them, I guess, are in the Canadian Stock Exchange, and some of them are over here in, I guess, the NASDAQ and so forth. So I've seen deals being made recently between big Northern California and Washington State and Oregon companies with Canada. They seem to be ahead of us. So have you looked into the Canadian companies, and are there some good ones that you think are still a good buy at this point?
Yeah, well, Canada is way ahead of us, of course, and they have both the Canadian Stock Exchange, the CSE, and the Toronto Stock Exchange, the TSX, that foster these companies. The Canadian Stock Exchange welcomes cannabis companies with open arms. The TSX has a little bit of a firmer requirement, and also won't list you unless, if you're a licensed producer, they won't list you unless you've already acquired that license. That's for a cannabis company, that's one of their requirements. But there are plenty of good companies up in Canada that have been performing very, very well. Of course, Canopy Growth being, the biggest. And of course, there was big news recently where the maker of Corona, Constellations Brands, actually just put in $4 billion into Canopy Growth.
Okay, so now Corona, of course, is the beer company. Out of where? What state are they from here? Or they're from Mexico?
Mexico.
They are from Mexico. Okay, so now you have Mexico company and Canadian companies together. They put in $400 million. Did you say?
They put in $4 billion.
$4 billion.
Yeah, it's the largest cannabis deal yet, only surpassed by a deal a couple of months back that was the merger between two of the largest in the space for a total of $2 billion.
So what happened when Corona bought in and to the company, and then they're investing $400 billion? What happened to the Corona stock since then, and what happened to the stock of what did you say, Canopy?
Yeah, the fact is Canopy has done very, very well. Corona, by the way, just to clarify, it is 4 billion, not 400 billion. But obviously it was a big surge in what was already a top producer based on the news. It came off its lows and bounced up pretty handily. The stock has been a big performer over the last few years, as they are one of the largest, if not the largest, in the space.
So, did they make big movements, both of those companies, when they sort of went to work together?
What did see? The announcement came out, just the other month, a couple of weeks ago, and I wasn't watching him particularly, but I see on the chart here that it did have a move up.
Okay. So, all right. So, Canadian companies, I think, are very important to look at because they've been allowed to get into this earlier than we have. I know that there's a Canadian company that bought one of the Florida licenses, so you have Canada there. And we have. There's also a company that owns one of the or partially owns one of the dispensaries here in New Mexico and also in New York. So they're really out there, and they're working with American companies now. So how has that affected the Florida program with the company that bought one of the licenses from one of the licensees?
Well, quite frankly, Florida just sold the license for, I believe, $25 million, which is a ridiculous price. By the way, I'm looking at the Canopy growth. I didn't want to cite numbers. I knew it had gone up. But basically, on the date of the announcement, the day before, they were trading at 29. And, by the close of business, they were at 33. As a matter of fact, the day before, they had closed at 24.62. They opened at 29, went up to 33, and after that made an ascent and move on $44. So the stock basically went up by 50% in the short term after that announcement.
And holding steady at this point?
Yeah, it's backing off a little bit. There's been some rumblings out of Washington. People aren't really sure what's happening next. I feel like they'll loosen because of the political clout. I mean, look, Phil Murphy in New Jersey won by a landslide. I know you know, as the previous governor wasn't your favorite.
No, not at all.
But the fact is he won by a landslide in New Jersey. And at the same time, you have Justin Trudeau that won by a landslide in Canada, both of them backing a cannabis-friendly environment.
Right.
So we're seeing a shift nationwide. And here in Florida, we just had our primaries 2 nights ago. And Andrew Gillum is the only candidate that supports full-blown adult use. Responsible use is what we like to refer to it as, but a full-blown recreational market. His counterpart on the Republican side is Ron DeSantis, and he supports medical use. But when the primaries were won, Gillum went out to a 5-point favorite position over DeSantis, and I do believe that the difference is cannabis.
Oh, fantastic. Well, I watched him speak after the election the other night, the primary, and I'm pretty excited for you guys there. What's the talk? I know it's only been a couple days, but does Gillum have a chance to do this? I know he's got the lead, but you can't believe these polls. And of course, Florida is under Republican rule, and I used to have when I lived in Florida, I used to have a saying, because I was there back, during the election where Bush won. I used to say Republicans don't count. So you have to be careful. There's dirty shit going on in Florida. In a close election, man, I just hope that everybody just watches what's going on. Now, speaking of politics, one of the companies, I can't remember which one, but former Speaker of the House John Boehner is involved on the board of directors of one of these is it a Canadian company or American company?
You know what? I had seen that news a couple of months back, and I can't remember off the top of my head what company that was. But smart people from all walks of life are getting involved in this industry. And if you go to a cannabis conference, you're going to find a lot of highly intelligent pioneers, entrepreneurs, and people that are for the good of the people. Here, like in Florida, I know it's not been the best state. Florida actually is a huge decider in the national markets. I believe that, only twice has Florida deviated from picking the winner in the last, 64 years. Only have they deviated twice from picking the winner in the election. So I like to say, as goes Florida, goes the federal election, the presidency. With regards to cannabis in Florida, 71.3% of us, it's a landslide victory, supported Amendment 2, which was the medical marijuana bill that went through in 2016 and had been rebuffed in 2014 because we had only had 57% of the vote, and it was a constitutional amendment. Meanwhile, Governor Rick Scott at the time got in with 49% of the vote. So more people approved of marijuana even then than approved of Rick Scott. At this point, Rick Scott, who's going to make an attempt to run in the Senate, and I urge you to vote him down. But the fact is that he's spent $2 million of Floridians' money opposing what we've already approved. They approved smokable medicine in that amendment from 2016, and they nixed it. Morgan & Morgan fought it, got a favorable ruling on it, and then they're still fighting it.
Right.
I don't know why.
Is it Pam Bondi that's also involved in this fight as well?
Yeah.
Against
absolutely.
us?
Absolutely. That's his right-hand woman there. And, we're spending our own money to fight what we already approved as citizens. I think that has irritated us, and I think it continues to mobilize us in a positive manner because we are really coming together for the greater good of the people.
Absolutely. Well, your medical program has been quite controversial from the beginning, and with the first time that you missed by a couple of percentage points of having it and so forth, and again, and the governor not willing to do what the will of the people have voted for. So that was just really sad and continues to be sad. But there's a big market there, one of the hugest markets in the country with the elderly people that live there. I spent 9 years in Florida, so I know what's going on. A lot of Canadians live there, so let's get back to more about investing just for a couple minutes before we go. Is there still time to buy into companies if you want to, like GW Pharmaceutical? I think they're up in the couple of $100 range or something, $240 or something. I'm not sure what it is lately. But is there still time to buy into somebody like that? Do you think? Is it going to explode more than it already has been since they were approved by the FDA?
Yeah, well, GW Pharma is undoubtedly a leader. The symbol is GWPH. It closed off, they closed off today at $146.62. Now, to let you know, they're not making one thin penny. And if they were making a thin penny, they'd be trading at 1,460 times earnings. Now, I don't feel that to be such a realistic price point. But I didn't say that the mark is based in reality necessarily and always sticks to its own metrics. They are the leader. They did get an approval on Epidiolex, which is a CBD-based, medicine. And they are currently in phase 2 on Sativex, which is a THC CBD combination. There is no doubt with the type of capitalization that they have to them that they will be around. I just am reluctant to tell someone to go rush into it at a various price point. I spoke in July in Sarasota, and the stock was 160 something. And I got a follow-up phone call from somebody at that conference, and they said, well, what about GW Pharma? GW Pharma, they were doing really well. I said, I think it's due for a pullback. And, you know, within weeks, it was down to 130. And I do think that they are a leader. I do think that you have to be very careful. And if you believe in something like this company, you know, I think that you might want to, you know, take a long-term approach. Also, if you're willing to buy X amount and you're willing to risk X amount, you may want to consider starting with a half position and seeing where it is a month or two from then.
All right, so let me ask you this, okay? What's going to happen when people realize that the cost to the patients of this Epidiolex and Sativex is like, for Epidiolex anyway, they're saying it's going to cost like $32,000 a year, when the stuff that people have been using now from the Charlotte's Web people and you know, just the mom and pops all this time is like $2,400 a year. And do you think, and let me just finish, and do you think that because it's an approved FDA, that it's going to be covered, this cannabis product, by people's medical plans?
Well, one would hope that, you know, CBD would be adopted, you know, into medical plans as covered medicine. I mean, certainly it's less expensive. I do think that overall CBD is overpriced, and I certainly think that $32,000 for 1 year's worth of CBD is astronomical. I think you can buy a 1,500 milligram tincture for somewhere between $150 to $200 right now.
Actually, I had a guy on a couple weeks ago. What was the name of the company? Can't think of the name of the company at the moment, but they have gotten their product into Walmart, and they're selling a 1,500 milligram tincture of CBD. It's called American Hemp Tincture, I think is what it's called, for $80. And that's
excellent.
I've been fighting about the prices of CBD for a long time now. It's really been overpriced and under-strengthed, so to speak. You know, you really have to watch what you're paying for it and how many milligrams of CBD are in something like that. So, yeah, I understand what you're saying. Do you know anything about a company called Tilray? It's a Canadian company.
Yeah, I mean, Tilray just came public and they went bananas. They're very well capitalized. And, you know, again, you know, quite frankly, you know, you're looking at a biomedical company, you know, and this is how even GW Pharma is being classified. But Tilray just came public and, you know, the stock, you know, basically tripled in the period of the last month and a half, if you will.
Can you explain to me, and do you would recommend, looking at some of this in options, where you have an option for X amount of months?
Okay, so an option is the rights to buy a stock or sell a stock at a certain specified price. And oftentimes they're used in hedging. But, you know, you may have been able to buy an option to buy Tilray at, let's say, $30 or $35. And if you bought that option, it might have cost you $10 at the time if you bought it when they first came out and the stock was more, in the 20 region. It would have been significantly out of the money, and depending upon the time frame would have depended upon the value. Options are broken up into two different values. You have time value and intrinsic value. If you have a $30 call option and the underlying security is trading at 25, it has no intrinsic value. It only starts to have intrinsic value after it breaks the $30 threshold. The rest of the value is made up of the time it takes for the contract to expire. And quite frankly, I, like GW Pharma, I would be a proponent if I was going to participate in and was interested in GW Pharma. I would probably position myself with options. Stock's currently $146. You know, I would maybe be inclined to write a $140 put a couple of months out. If the stock goes down a bit, your risks would be mitigated. And if it continues to go up, you would just benefit from the money that you took in off of the investment to begin with. And it just depends on your risk parameters.
So you said risk, okay? So is doing it that way and buying options at different prices, sort of like futuristic? I'm not real sure how all that works really, but is that more of a gambler's type investment than something that's solid?
Well, it depends upon how you play it, and there's definitely gambling if you're buying options. I'm more inclined to be selling options, and so if you sold a put, a 140 put, it would give somebody the rights to sell you the stock for a certain specified time at a certain specified price. For instance, a September 140 put is currently trading at just above $2. And so if the stock stayed at 146 through September 21st, which is, less than a month away, it's the third Friday of September. If the stock stayed above 140, you would simply pocket the $2. If it dropped below 140, it would start to lose you money at the point in which it dropped below 138.
Wow, that's way too complicated for me and probably for most people. But there's great opportunity out there. This is we don't really live in times where there's so many new industries. This is a huge multi-billion-dollar industry that is just emerging over the last couple of years. So it's just really fun and exciting to sit back and watch. Like I said, I didn't have money to really invest in this business. I've been an advocate, but I decided to buy domain names. But I was buying domain names, for internet companies, way before I bought cannabis domain names. I was just investing in domain names. But then I focused in about 10 years ago on cannabis domain names, and for $10 a year, I have a nice portfolio of a few hundred domain names, and eventually I'm going to be doing something with those, and people are going to want them. So it's a way that I think people can spend very little money yet invest in the industry. And of course, there are stocks out there that you can buy that are $5 stocks and $3 and $2 stocks and so forth as well. So just any last little, if people are thinking of investing something in this industry, of course you have to be willing to lose money. It's like going to the racetrack. But what just short-term advice can you give us right now if people want to invest?
Okay, well, there are several stocks that I am interested in, and I wrote an article back in July of 2016 in which I, advocated the purchase of GW Pharma. I believe it was around $90 at the time. It's gone gangbusters since and provided several trading opportunities. I also mentioned Zynerba, which went to $20 from $7 at the time that I wrote the article, and is now back to $8. And the symbol on Zynerba is ZYNE. I would be very careful about rushing into GW Pharma. I would position around it. I would play it and watch it very closely. I would maybe utilize options in terms of taking advantage of that. I do still support and like the first mover advantage that Kush Bottles has. Kush Bottles is KSHB and closed today at $5.16. One that has been underperforming, a Canadian grower that has been having an excellent few days, but I recommended when I was in Sarasota, and it was trading at $1.28 to $1.32. It closed today at $1.66. That's Supreme Cannabis Company out of Canada, and the symbol on that for U.S. investors is SPRWF. And two others that I think that you should keep your eye on, but I'd be willing to throw a few dollars at, is Acacia Holdings. It closed today at 24 cents. It's ACCA. That's a full-blown vertical out of Tennessee. Their mantra is soil to oil. All their product is tested several times over, pre and post harvest. And they're wonderful people that are really getting entrenched in the culture and changing the laws there in Tennessee. And I think they'll end up doing quite well.
And we're talking hemp there, right?
That's a hemp market
Right.
currently, and of course, I think that it'll grow from a hemp market to a medical market and eventually recreational. And then one company I also really like, and when I got involved originally, the stock was around 30 cents. It's LDSYF. That's Lifestyle Delivery Systems. And originally when I learned and was recommending the company, it was 30 cents. Since then, it visited $1.20. And with these wild markets these days, it has returned to 32.5 cents, Larry. And I think that represents a real value. So there's several that I would buy, but you have to be patient and assess your risk factors. I do think that there's lots of value here. Of course, I also continue to be a fan of extraction companies, and I continue to be a fan of laboratory testing as that begets safe and responsible market.
I have no knowledge of the market, but I'm a big fan of extraction companies and edible companies. That's I think the two places to be if you want to go into the industry and actually work in the industry. So Alexander Nachman, thank you very much for all that. Is there like a website or a blog site or anything or a Facebook page that people can get in touch with you with?
I can be emailed at 4 ahnpoint@gmail.com. Anybody that wants to find me, just hit Google Alexander Cannabis. I promise I'll still be number one.
Fantastic. Alexander Nachman, thank you very much. Keep the fight going on in Florida, and say hello to all those great advocates like Gary Stein and Roundtree and all those guys. So we'll be right back after this.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the stage, Scott Baxter.
Well, I want to thank Alexander Nachman for explaining some of that investing in the market stuff. Don't spend your rent money. If you can afford to invest, invest. Don't miss car payments. Be smart about it. I also want to thank my two radio mentors, both with the initials HS. Thank you for your inspiration. If you'd like to be on the show, if you have a product to sell, a story to tell, you're an advocate, an activist, a patient, it's info@mmjradio.com. Again, info@mmjradio.com. If you missed any of our old shows, you can go to medicalmarijuanaradio.com or mmjradio.com. My YouTube channel is LSLove88. On SoundCloud, I'm MMJ Radio, and on Spreaker, I'm also MMJ Radio. I'm on CannabisTube.net. Check that out. You can see the video there. Also on Spreaker and iHeartRadio, we're on the Time for Hemp Global Broadcasting Network. And we're also on OnNowTV.com, channel 937. Coming soon. I keep saying it. I hope it happens soon. TheCannaChannel.com. Peace and love, everybody. Peace and love. And chaos where it needs to be. Oh, yeah, and fuck Trump.
Hey.